What is up, guys? Mike Berlinski here with Wretched Sound. Welcome to episode 16 of season 3 of the Wretched Sound podcast. We have finally reached Black Sabbath studio album number 16, DEHUMANIZER, my favorite album of Black Sabbath's for years, only recently dethroned by Headless Cross. But we're not here to talk about Headless Cross. We're here to talk about DEHUMANIZER. I still love this album. It might be tied for first place. It might not be my second pick. I don't know. Ronnie James Dio returns to the band. Geezer Butler returns to the band. Vinny Appice returns to the band. This is such a huge album, and although it completely stunts and stifles the growth that Tony Iommi had going with Neil Murray, Cozy Powell, and Tony Martin on the last few records, still, DEHUMANIZER, Diamond in the Rough, probably the heaviest Sabbath album, a crucial fucking album, just incredible front to back, not one bad song, and so many things had to happen in order for this record to come out exactly the way that it did with the lineup that it did. And Black Sabbath has a 40-plus year career. 40, 50-year career with stories like that. Stories surrounding albums like that. Like, imagine how the stars had to align for this to happen exactly the way it did. And DEHUMANIZER is probably my favorite story like that in the Black Sabbath catalog. So our guest co-host today is going to be Mr. Joe Hufford out of Sneezing Panda Studios, and we haven't talked to Joe since Mob Rules, and before Mob Rules we had him on for Sabotage, which I believe is his favorite Black Sabbath album. So this will be an interesting topic. And it's going to get away from the Tony Martin stuff a lot, because not only because we're talking about DEHUMANIZER, but because I know Joe, given our past talks, isn't even really that familiar with the Tony Martin Black Sabbath stuff. He's an Ozzy guy or he's a Dio guy. So this will be a strictly Dio conversation, and if another vocalist gets brought up at all, it's probably going to be Ozzy. So really excited to see where this goes, and I've been itching to talk about this album since we started the series. So strap yourselves in if you've been following along up until now. Thank you. If this is your first time, if you like what we're doing, please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's get into this DEHUMANIZER conversation with Mr. Joe Hufford. Let's give Joe a call. Thanks for tuning in. Hey, Joe?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming back to the show. I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
I know how much we both love DEHUMANIZER. I'm listening to it in the background right now. I am so stoked about it. I guess I'm ready if you are. If you want to, I already kind of did an introduction for you, unless you have a little more to say about yourself. I just kind of talked about you in the studio.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
That's fine. Okay, cool. So do you, Did you tell me this was one of your favorite albums? Sabotage is your favorite Sabbath album, right?
Yeah, I grew up listening to the Ozzy era Sabbath, and, that stuff really, has a very special place in my heart. But I really do enjoy DEHUMANIZER quite a bit. It's my favorite of Dio's works.
100%. And a lot of people give that credit to Heaven and Hell, or some people say that about Mob Rules. A lot of people give that credit to Heaven and Hell, but for me, it's not even close. It's DEHUMANIZER. Totally agree. Yeah, I've been so excited to dig into this, since we started the series. So I'm jittery right now. I'm so excited to talk about this. So did you have anything specific that because we had a conversation about this beforehand, was there anything specific that I did not cover in my talking points that you wanted to address?
No.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to jump right in if you are, and then, I'll do my talking points, and then just kind of we'll go back and forth and just have at it, All right, so this is the first Black Sabbath album in over 10 years to feature Ronnie James Dio on vocals and Vinny Appice on drums, and the first in 9 years to feature Geezer Butler back on bass. More or less, the Mob Rules lineup has been reunited. Do you think the overall album feels natural or a little awkward at times because of the lineup being shuffled again suddenly? Personally, I think this album has unchecked heaviness and raw energy within the Black Sabbath catalog. It's like unique in its heaviness and its raw energy. It's been my favorite Black Sabbath record for years. So what do you feel about the overall feel, the overall vibe and the tone of the record?
I feel that, like you said, it did take on a heavier tone. Yeah, I feel all these guys were at the top of their game in this album. I really enjoyed, picking it back up and re-listening to it. Dio's coming in like sounding meaner than ever.
Yes.
They slowed it down a little bit from some of the tracks on Mob Rules and Heaven and Hell. Just the pace is a little bit slower.
Yeah.
But it's slow in a good way. It's slow in a heavy, dark, like haunting way. It creeps up on you.
The opener is incredible. Like Computer God comes in so fucking heavy. And like Dio, when the vocals drop in, that first pause in the guitar, and it's a drum break, and then the vocals first drop in, and Dio is like almost snarling. It's such an incredible opener. I love how the album starts. Did you have any more?
No.
Okay. Just making sure, because I if I cut you off, like let me know, like tell me to fuck off, let me know I cut you off. Alright, so DEHUMANIZER covers a variety of lyrical topics, and I wanted to know what some of your favorites were. Like, mine are, like, obviously, computers worshipped as gods, and the televangelists, and I love how they spoke out against this album, too, that whole community, and the community pushing Christianity on television, and then songs about individualism, obviously that's I, and then, like, songs about the afterlife as well. So, what are some of your favorite lyrical topics that like stand out to you on the record?
I remember first picking this album up, digging into my father's CD collection back in the day.
Yeah.
And hearing Computer God and automatically falling in love with the album just based on the lyrical content and the way the song comes in. I really like the psychological approach of After All the Dead and I.
Yep.
Looking at the self, looking into yourself, and looking at what comes next.
Yep. Yeah, it's Dio is so he's just so straightforward and to the point. Like, he paints a lot of metaphorical pictures, especially with his solo work. He gets very fantastical. But on this album in particular, like, this is just a straightforward, just rock album. And he doesn't beat around the bush. Like, that's what I love about the lyrics on this record. Like, if you read along, and like, you read the song titles and then you read along with Dio while you're listening to the album, like, it's very just in your face. Like, no beating around the bush, and I love that. I love that he got away. He got away from the fantasy for a little bit to just do a heavy in your face rock album, and that's kind of what they set out to do, from what I remember from interviews and doing like more recent research. A lot of things had to happen for DEHUMANIZER to become the record it is. Like, before I called you, I was talking. I did my little intro, and I was talking about just certain people being in the right place in the right time, or certain people unfortunately being injured at the right time or the wrong time for this record to come out the exact way it did. So, like, most importantly, like, drummer Cozy Powell had a broken pelvic bone from a horse riding accident, which led to Vinny Appice coming back on drums, and Tony Martin was already committed to his first solo album at the time, which we talked about in the last episode. which led to the band sticking with Ronnie James Dio. So do you think these songs, I know you're not really that familiar with the Tony Martin era, but like, do you think these songs would have been as strong with Tony Martin on vocals and possibly a different drummer, like if Cozy were still on drums? Like in an alternate universe, like, is this as strong an album, or is it weaker? Or is it about the same?
I think that if anyone replaced Dio on this album, it would weaken it. It's a very strong, well-rounded album. Overall, I think all the guys were in the right place at the right time, top of their game. Ronnie James Dio, he sounds mean in this album.
He does.
That brings a heaviness in and of itself just over the guitar. It doesn't matter how heavy your guitar is. If your singer is soft, your singer is soft. And the heavy snarl that Dio brings in, it's some of my favorite like vocal work in the Sabbath catalog.
Yep.
And Dio's work, period.
Yep. Yeah, what I liked about the most about how things worked out, I mean, I know you checked these out recently because we were talking about them, but if you listen to like Tony Martin records, like if you listen to like Headless Cross and Tear, they're very heavy on the keyboards, very dark, ethereal, heavy on the keyboards, and that complements Tony Martin as a singer. But with Dehumanizer, the music it's heavy, it's mean, it's snarling, it's straightforward rock and roll, little bit of keyboard sprinkled in here and there, with Jeff Nichols, but like all in all, it's not, the keyboard laden record that the predecessors were. It's its own monster, and that complements Dio's vocal style on this album very well. Like the lineup of this record and the way they perform these songs in the studio, it's just this perfect alignment of, not like you mentioned all these people being at the top of their game at the time, but just like the chemistry too, the chemistry of that, because you can have the best players in the world, but if they don't have chemistry, if they don't get along, the record's gonna sound like shit. Like it's the chemistry of this lineup at this time too that makes it a perfect fucking album. I love that. So Dio quit after the... Now we're going to talk about the Tude. The Tude. There's a lot of Tude in the air during this period. So Dio quit after this album, after not wanting to support Ozzy Osbourne at Costa Mesa. Dio also had a lot of issues with Tony Martin coming to shows and hanging around to support the band during the Dehumanizer era. So, in your opinion, not that you know the man, or knew the man at the time, but did Ronnie James Dio overreact, or can you identify with how he must have felt dealing with all those former Sabbath singers?
I almost look at it like it's the jealous girlfriend perspective,
Yep. Diva shit, but I gotta respect it.
It basically, like, he might have felt threatened by the other singers.
Sure.
With them hanging out, even if they were just hanging out to support the band, he liked his spot, and yeah.
Yeah, what's mine is mine, and yeah. Even if he was, even if people, a lot of people looked at him like a god even back then. But, that probably went to his head a little bit, but that's, at the same time, like, that self-conscious factor is always going to be there. And in the end, everything was Tony Iommi's decision. So it's like, okay, well, what if Tony Iommi and Tony Martin are sweet on each other again? And what if Tony Martin isn't doing this solo album? Like, I don't know what he must have been thinking, but, like, I don't know. I somewhat look at it as, like, childish behavior, but at the same time, like, if I put myself in those shoes, and, like, I've been in similar situations in bands, I guess, and it's like, I think it's natural. And when you read about these, when you read these interviews and when you look at this time period, like, you're just seeing, like, local scene drama happening on the big stage, more or less, is how I look at it. So it's all kind of relatable. I guess basic bitch question, like, what are your favorite and least favorite songs on the album? If you have any least favorite, because that was hard for me.
Yeah, I'd say, Sins of the Father's intro, like, the lyrics are fine, but the intro is a little bit just a little lacking for me in the way it sounds, the way it comes in. And then Too Late's a little, it drags a little on a little bit, which I think it's kind of supposed to.
Yeah.
But, because we talk about eternity, you kind of get the point, but yeah. I'd say those are probably my least favorite.
Sure.
But overall, it's still a pretty strong album.
Yeah. Yeah, my favorites are definitely like Computer God, After All I, and Buried Alive. I'm going to talk about Buried Alive a lot more in a little bit, but my least favorites, I don't know. I got to go with Time Machine and Too Late. And as for why I picked Time Machine of all songs, like we'll get into that a little later too. But real quick, I did not cover this in the intro, and you kind of updated me a little bit when we were talking earlier. So like, what are you doing? What specifically are your duties, your responsibilities at Sneezing Panda Studios?
I'm one of the administrators, so I have 1/3 of the final say.
Cool.
It's basically any group decision, any company decision. But I also, I'm deeply involved with the creative writers and in the storyboarding. I also compose and write the score. I'm in charge of the sound effects. Yeah.
Awesome. Good for you. That's really cool work. Yeah, I love video editing. That's one of my new passions now is just obviously like recording and cutting audio, like being like the rather unprofessional but dedicated like sound engineer that I am now, but also like I'm really getting into all these different video editor programs and like starting to like venture into that world a little bit as I'm like YouTubing more and more. So it's a process, and like my shit is cringe right now, but like I'm really, really fascinated by it, and I'm really starting to delve into that and finally take it seriously. Excuse me. Guitar stuff. Because you play strings, so I could ask you about this. Sometimes I have to omit questions like these depending on who I'm talking to. So, do you have like a favorite riff or a favorite just guitar moment on the record? Or a least favorite, or you could do both.
Which one was it? Hold on, I need to look at this set list because I had opinions when I was listening to it earlier. Okay. Yeah, I'd say my favorite riffs and favorite solos are in I, just the way that whole song comes together.
Epic song. Great hook. One of the best hooks.
Yeah, I like the way After All the Dead sounds as well.
Yeah. Yep.
The slow riffs on that just like sound very hellish. They sound,
yes. Hellacious. Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, this is hard for me. I was talking about Computer God and how I'm obsessed with that opening, but although that's like one of my favorite album openings, probably of all time, not just in Sabbath, my favorite guitar moments are both in Buried Alive. I love the opening riff, and I love the solo. I love how heavy and crushing that opening riff is. It almost sounds like it could be like it almost sounds like a different band the way that song starts, at least to me. But then, you know, obviously the vocals come in and it's clearly, you know, a Black Sabbath song from the same record. But the way that song starts, it's just so, it's like almost surprisingly heavy or deceivingly heavy. Like that could be a Death song, or I'm trying to think of like 90s 80s, 90s death metal bands. Like, there are 80s, 90s death metal bands, like on older, like, Deicide records or Death records that start off with very similar sounding riffs. So the first time I ever heard that and really paid attention to it, it was years later, years after I had first heard the record and then taken in a lot of different kinds of metal afterwards. But then I heard that riff again recently, and I started taking it a different way. And I just, I don't know, there's just something about it. And the solo, Tony Iommi is very, like, specifically arranged, like, calculated runs in that solo, and there are little, like, tangents in that solo that I love that are very unique for Sabbath. Even, I don't know, I'm not good at, like, humming along, but, like, he does this little, like, like, right in the middle of it. It's just, I didn't do it justice at all, but it's just this epic, like, soaring melody. Like, the chaos just stops. It goes into that really, it's like a 5-second hook that never comes back. It only happens once in the song, and I love little Easter eggs like that make you go back looking for them again. It's really, really, well written, in my opinion. So sorry to ramble about, like, a 5-second section in a solo, but anyway, what did you think when you heard? Yeah, what did you think when you heard the album for the very first time? Because I remember hearing Time Machine during Wayne's World, but, like, years later, like, not right, because I remember seeing Wayne's World when I was very young, like, when it first came out, but not really paying attention to the music, like, specifically who was who, until a few years later. So, like, I remember hearing Time Machine and loving it, but once I heard the rest of the album years later, it became one of my least favorites, even though the whole album is great. But I think I just kind of overplayed that song to myself, and that's why I picked it as a least favorite. So, like, what were your first impressions? Like, without thinking about, like, the individuals in the band and, you know, people being at the top of their game or, like, band drama going on, like, just when you heard the music for the first time, like, what was your first impression? What were you thinking?
I thought it was one of the best albums I had ever heard, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I was a teenager going through my father's CD collection. I picked up Mob Rules. I listened to it. I liked it. And then I think Dehumanizer was the last one out of the three that I listened to. But then I listened to it again and again and again.
Yep.
But, you know, obviously this was fucking 15, 16 years ago, whatever. But
yeah.
I got really into it really quick. I had I and After All the Dead on repeat for days on end.
Yep. Those are the best hooks on the record. That's how they get you.
But overall, you know, the thing is, I grew up, when I was at my father's, my parents were always split up. When I was at my father's, I watched a lot of Terminator. So hearing Computer God off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
You know, right. But when I was at my mother's, she was very strictly religious. You know, I grew up not having a television, so on and so forth.
Yep.
So hearing TV Crime, a couple tracks in, also really hit home. So then, of course, I talked about the psychological aspects that I appreciated the album, and, you know, did back then as well. So overall, it just, like, hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yep. I pretty much have, like, the same story for both of those tracks. Like, when I was younger, I was super obsessed with mostly T2 Judgment Day, but the first Terminator movie as well. And I think I actually saw T2 first. But either way, when I first came across Computer God, the first thing I thought of was Skynet, and that made me love it more. That that cinematic that cinematic correlation, or just that connection. And TV Crimes, I just remember always, because, like, when I was younger, my great-grandmother, was always on the verge of being scammed by these faith healers, these fake faith healer people, you know what I mean? Like, that whole, that whole movement. And she was always on the verge of being taken for a ride by one of these people. And we always had to talk her out of, like, you know, doing ridiculous things like sending a lot of cash out in the mail and stuff like that. He healed me through the TV, you know what I mean? So it's like, that song just, that's what I think of when I hear that song. And it's very, like, personal to me, because that was, like, it sounds ridiculous that, like, someone would do that, but, like, they do get people who are faithful like that. So, like, that's the connection that I have to that song. So, yeah, right on. Good answers. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this because we just talked about Headless Cross and Tear, and you said they both kind of reminded you of Queensryche more. So, like, I know it's kind of, like, fresh in your head. So, talking about Jeff Nichols again, I guess. Like, the keyboards were dialed way back on Dehumanizer, and Ronnie James Dio, in interviews, said that he was a stickler for this album, having that straightforward rock vibe. You know, that could be perfectly replicated live. Like, we're not going to be a studio band. We're going to play it this way in the studio. We're going to play it the exact same way live. There's going to be no magic, no backing tracks, no samples, no bullshit. That was his attitude, or that was probably the band's attitude at the time. So, now that you've heard a lot of the keyboard-heavy stuff, like, is this album perfect the way it is? Or could you hear more Jeff Nichols kind of sprinkled throughout? Like, would you add keyboards? Or take some away anywhere, or?
I think the keyboards that have been added to the album, like, they're almost in between the tracks mostly, and it gives it off the bat with Computer God. You have this digital feel between that and the album cover. You get this digital feel, like you're like almost like while you're listening to it, almost like you're being watched, you're being observed as much as you're observing the album.
Yeah.
I
wow,
like
awesome, great.
Feel like it creates a mechanical paranoia between the lyrical content and the way the keyboards are sprinkled in there. It's very tasteful.
Yeah, the album sucks you in right away. I've never thought about it exactly like that, but I love the way you just put that. Really cool. Did you have anything else, or were you just talking about the intro?
I was talking about the whole album. It's sprinkled in.
Yeah.
Like the keyboards are sprinkled in between certain songs. I forget which ones it is, but my memory's shit. But the way they are, like, throughout the whole album, it just gives you a certain vibe that, like, it's almost like you're in a simulation or you're in a machine. It really it's kind of a creepy vibe to it. I think the keyboards are well done throughout the album.
I've never thought of it that way, but that is brilliant. Like, you are surveying the album, and the album is surveying you, or what you know, the concepts that they're talking about are surveying you. I love that. So the last time we talked, you said you hadn't gotten into Dio's solo work much. Has that changed?
I gave Holy Diver a listen.
Awesome.
It's pretty good. I do, like, man, when I hear Dio's voice, I just have it, like, I have it married to Iommi's riffs.
Sure.
So it's not that Dio's solo work is bad, it's just, it's not what my brain wants to hear.
Yes, because, well, no, I get it, because Dio and Vivian Campbell is very different from Dio and Tony Iommi. Two completely different experiences for your brain to absorb. I mean, I love them both. I mean, I would take Dehumanizer over any solo album, including Holy Diver, and I'm gonna get crucified for saying that. But I would take Dehumanizer even over Holy Diver, and I love that whole record. So, you're on the Dio Tony Iommi team, like you're still, like, gravitating towards that sound, is what you're saying? Like, it didn't hit you as hard when you listen to the solo stuff?
Yeah, I mean, Dio's performance in those albums was good, and like none of the instrumentals were bad per se.
It's just not the same. It's not the same.
It's a little. I hate to say it this way. It's a little flowery.
Yeah, it hits different, and even down to the lyrics. That's why I brought up the fantastical lyrics and the metaphors. Doesn't do as much of that with Sabbath.
Yeah, I really like.
With Sabbath, it's more personal and more straightforward.
I have a thing for personal music that really gets to your head or makes you ask questions.
Right. I mean, you either want to have an existential crisis or you just want to be able to immediately relate to what you're listening to. And sometimes that's more enjoyable as reading a clever scene or a clever metaphor and having to figure it out or decipher it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, we've come to the end of what I wanted to discuss. This is next to Headless Cross, because I love the simplicity and eeriness of the Headless Cross album cover. But this particular Reaper, and this, like, with the electricity, and it's just, like, it's combining that mechanical surveillance or that overbearing, like, mechanical presence, almost like tyrannical presence, with the Grim Reaper. So it's like taking this futuristic aspect and combining it with the Grim Reaper, which is, you know, a tale as old as time, for lack of not knowing the real history of the Reaper. But I love the juxtaposition of the album cover in regards to that, and this, it's a haunting image. It's the best of both worlds, like future and past, and it's easily my favorite Black Sabbath album cover. So what are your thoughts on the Dehumanizer album cover?
So I was so struck as a youth by the album cover that when I was trying to form a metal band at the age of, I'd say I was 16, I had actually written a metal song based on the cover of this album called Metal Reaper.
Okay.
And it was basically just about the Grim Reaper not liking his job, thinking it sucks.
Yep.
It was supposed to be a little ironic tale, but I had based it off of this album cover. So the album cover really struck me when I was younger. I really liked it. It's a cool cover. It's a very cool concept, and I really think that, you know, like you said, it really adds to this whole aesthetic of the album of being mechanical and like watching you back, listening to you back.
Yeah, it really inspired me. I remember seeing that cover and being inspired by that album cover maybe a couple years before I ever heard one song on the album. As embarrassing as that is to say. I really think that, because Black Sabbath has always been a band that's like come and gone for me. Like, they've never even been in my top 10 favorite bands, but they have this extensive catalog and all these lineup changes and all these stylistic changes, and it's just, they're a band worth talking about, and that's why I wanted to do this series and talk about every album and pick them all apart. So yeah, maybe I've said it on a previous episode of this, but I can't even think of, for the life of me, the first Sabbath song I heard. It was probably like Iron Man or War Pigs or something, like you would, a typical answer like that. But yeah, I definitely saw the cover of this album before I heard any of the music. And you know what? I probably had heard Time Machine by that point, but didn't know it was them, just from having seen Wayne's World. Yeah. It's... Black Sabbath is not known for their album covers. I mean, unless it's somebody like Paranoid, unless you're, like, making fun of it, like a guy in, like, you know, the pink spandex or whatever. I can't think of it exactly right now, but, like, that outfit, that ridiculous outfit. So yeah, not a band known for their album covers, but just I went. There are some really really good ones, and this is one of them. So yeah, is there anything we did not touch on? Did anything pop into your head that like you would want to cover with Dehumanizer?
No, I don't believe so. I think we covered just about everything.
Yeah. So, you got... Alright, so we talked about a few different songs. Your undisputed favorite track on the album. Let's end on a high note.
I still gotta go with I. After all these years, it's very personally nostalgic, you know?
The second I'm listening to it on CD in the background, and vinyl's my preferred format, but like I did the CD so I wouldn't have to flip it. But, I came on the second you said that, and I just had to say something. Because that was just so fucking weird how that happened.
Yeah, that's how things work for me usually.
Yep.
You know, I will ask you something, and this isn't technically about this album.
No, go for it, dude. Do it.
Did you hear the Dio tribute? This Is Your Life. It's a compilation of like covers and whatnot.
That I don't think so. No, I it's something I've read about. I don't think so. No.
Yeah. Tenacious D got an award for their performance in it, but there's a cover of I in it that's pretty well done. Who was it? I forget. But there's I's on there. They have some bigger names like Corey Taylor and some of the Metallica dudes snuck in there, or Metallica in general snuck in there.
Sure.
The Scorpions did a really good job. I forget. Anyway, but it's a decent tribute all the way around. I'd give it at least a listen. Just because we were talking about I, it made me think of it.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I've learned about so many albums from doing this series that I haven't listened to yet. Like, I have not listened to Bill Ward's solo stuff or Tony Martin's solo stuff. And now apparently I need to listen to these Dio covers.
Now, have you ever listened to Iommi's solo album? It's just called Iommi.
No, I haven't. I honestly, like, and like I was saying before, like, Black Sabbath, like, I wouldn't even consider them a top 10 favorite band. So, like, any solo stuff, like, that stuff I'm going to learn from having done 20 episodes about Black Sabbath, you know what I mean? Like, so, like what are, teach me about that. What should I listen to?
So that one has a lot of interesting guests. Ozzy came back to do a track. Who else? I think Lemmy did a track. Did Lemmy do a track? It's been so long. Serge Tankian did a track with him. Phil Anselmo did a track with him. And, those are definitely worth listening to. Also, on the topic of tributes, have you ever heard the Nativity in Black tributes to Black Sabbath?
Yes. That I heard from Robert Music Matters. That I have checked out.
Yeah, because those two are stacked.
Sure.
But
what else you got?
I think that was it on the topic of Sabbath. If you've already checked those out, you mentioned when Dio didn't want to support Ozzy. Did you ever listen to what happened with that concert?
Are you talking, like, I watched a video and it was Dio in the tour bus. This is a long time ago. I'm, like, remembering fragments of this. Dio was giving an interview in the tour bus. Like, not long after Dehumanizer came out. Like, it was the 90s. Maybe it was 3 years later. Maybe it was 1995. And he was in the tour bus. And he was just bitching about Ozzy and that show, but I don't remember the conversation. I just remember, like, catching these big diva vibes, but, like, it's Dio, so I didn't care, you know? No, go ahead, talk about it.
So, what happened was he refused to play, so Rob Halford stepped in. So, if you look up the live footage from that concert,
yeah,
it's actually Sabbath, but with Rob Halford fronting. And, you know, that of course...
I don't remember this. That's huge.
That leads to a spectacular what if. Like, what if they continued that?
Oh, I know. I love the alternate universe theories, like I wouldn't, you know, I agree with you, like, I would not want to hear Dehumanizer with fucking Tony Martin on vocals, because I like Tony Martin on Tony Martin albums and Dio on Dio albums, but, God. Rob Halford fronting Sabbath, professionally recorded, something in the same vein as maybe Painkiller or something like that, but with, like, Tony Iommi writing the riffs, like, that's an insane alternate universe theory. That's worth a listen.
Also, the Nativity in Black tribute, the first one, the Wizard cover. I don't know if you realize this, but the Bullring Brummies, whom no one's ever heard of, that's actually Rob Halford fronting. And I can't remember if it was Butler or Iommi on the track, but one of them was on that track. So that's just an interesting little...
The Wizard?
The Wizard off Nativity in Black 1.
Bullring Brummies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Butler. I think it was Geezer Butler and Rob Halford, but it could have been Iommi and Rob Halford. It's been a long time since I've looked at that thing.
It's worth a revisit for me as well, because... You know, this is something I checked out at a record store in passing, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, yeah, I know, I think Rob Zombie did something. Or maybe, you know what, back then it might have been White Zombie.
Yeah, White Zombie did Children of the Grave. Static X was on the second one, doing Behind the Wall of Sleep. Slayer was on one of them. Pantera was on one of them. System of a Down.
Pantera would have done, like, Electric Funeral, maybe.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Right on.
Slayer's Hand of Doom is one of my favorite covers. Like,
I don't even remember. That's something I should... I have a list. I've been, like, putting this massive playlist together in Notepad since I started talking to you guys about Sabbath. So I gotta check that cover out for sure.
Just listen to the tributes. Feel free to skip the very last track on the second tribute. It's fucking Busta Rhymes.
Oh, you know what? It's Iron Man, isn't it?
Yeah,
No. I already heard it. But you know what sucks? You know what sucks even more? Is that Ozzy's actually on it.
No, the thing is, though, is Ozzy's on it, but, like, if you listen to Ozzy's part, it sounds really good. Ozzy was on point.
Well, yeah. Well, no. I wasn't dissing Ozzy. I was just saying, like, Ozzy with Busta Rhymes, like, bothers me. Like, just that.
I don't know if you've ever checked out Ozzy's Prince of Darkness box set, but there's a lot of weird shit like that he's put out over the years.
Yeah.
Just with random rappers and, like...
You know, we're talking... In a couple records, we're going to be talking about Forbidden, and... Ice-T was on the first track, so that'll be an interesting conversation when we get there. But yeah, the random stuff with the rappers, like, it's gotta hit just right, or I just can't do it.
Yeah, Ice-T is kind of a different story because, like, he's got Body Count.
Body Count is good. I've
seen them a few times live, and, like, man, like. It's good shit.
Yeah.
It's a good mosh pit, too.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Oh, no beef with Ice-T. No beef with Tutuola. Alright, what else you got?
I think that was it. I mean, you know, as far as, like, little Sabbath spin-offs, you know, I know a lot of, like, Halford's side projects. that are pretty interesting and different. A lot of these guys, if you do your research, do like some interesting side projects. I got really into that when I was like in my teen years, just like, oh, I really like this singer, so I just like look at all their work, or I really like this guitarist, so I look at all their work.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah,
I have to do a ton of research. I mean, this is just... I'm just so glad we started doing this, because I've got to revisit a lot, and I've got to learn a lot too, and I'm grateful. So, and I'm grateful you came back. I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing another one.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
For sure. All right. Well, as of now, after tonight, we've got 4 records left, and then we're done. If you're open to it, I think I'm booked for the rest of it, but like if you want to do a 3-way call, if you want to look at the last 4 records, I'm including The Devil You Know in this, by the way. That's why I say 4. But if you want to look at the last 4 records, if there's one in particular you want to do, I could try to 3-way you in if you're open to it.
I'm open to it. My suggestion would be 13. I've actually seen them perform some of that live.
You know what? Oh, yeah, that's right. Never mind. I'll keep that to myself. But yes, 13 is probably going to be the one, for sure. Alright, 13, though, we're going to do second last. Because I'm saving The Devil You Know for last, just because it's, technically not Sabbath, but it kind of is. So, I don't know.
They line up as Dehumanizer. Like, it kind of... I actually learned about that one in a magazine in Borders. And
right.
Then went and bought it. Because
right.
I was just like, wait, they put out another album? What?
Yeah.
So I, went and bought it immediately at
right.
the same Borders.
No, I know. And it's like, this lineup is just... That lineup is just so good. Yeah, and those songs are just so brutal. Like, so like that Doom vibe stuck, and it's definitely Iommi's writing on guitar, but those songs are just so tough sounding. Bible Black is a monster of a track. I don't want to get too far into it, but what's that one song? Rock and Roll Angel?
Yeah.
Yeah, even that, even the songs that have, poppier riffs and lyrics, have this punch. That album's got a unique grit and punch to it, and I love that cover. But I'm going to save this for that night, that conversation. Alright, I appreciate the talk, and I'll have this up on YouTube soon, and I'll tag you up, and we'll go from there.
Alright, sounds good.
Alright, you have a good night. Thanks again.
Yeah, you too, man. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.